Welcome to week 4. This week we're going to continue with finale, but we're going to learn about a new type of entry as well as how to enter lyrics as well as transposing the song. This week's assignment is going to be a choral soprano, alto, tenor, bass, or SATB with piano version of Let It Go from Frozen. Ever since Let It Go came out in 2013, it's was and remains one of the most popular songs for especially young choirs to do. So there's a good chance that even though you won't start directing choirs for another couple years, you'll still be performing this song, and this way you'll have a version in your computer that you can manipulate to fit the needs of your choir when that happens. So let's start by opening Finale. And you have this PDF here. This is the version that we're going to be basing it off of. Click on the Setup Wizard. We're going to make a few changes. Now you might think that we want to use this SATB piano, but we actually don't. Because, for one, that would have 4 staves, one for soprano, one for alto, one for tenor, one for bass, whereas we only want 2. We want one for the women and one for the men. Also, if we add expression notes, sometimes it would put them on both the vocals and the piano when we might only want them on one. So even though it seems like this would work, and it could, there's just some other problems that pop up. So we're going to leave it on Create New Ensemble. We're going to change the scoring size to octavo, which is the traditional choral sheet music size. We're not going to be exporting parts, but we'll still change this one too, just in case for some reason we decide to export them, although you don't need to for this specific assignment. Go to Next. So for voices, we just want to do voice 2. And we'll go to Keyboards, Piano. With that highlighted, you're going to hit the down arrow so that the voices are on top of the piano. Go to Next. And now we're going to input all the information from the song. We're not going to go with a subtitle on this one. That's my cat. Arranger. So this one actually does have an arranger, Mac Huff. He's a very famous arranger of choral music and has been for a very long time. We're going to use his name as well as yours. No lyricist. For copyright, we're going to use 2013 because that's the copyright of the actual song, 2014 because that's the copyright of this arrangement, as well as 2019 because that's when you're submitting it. The key on this one, that's actually where the transposition is going to come into play. We'll start with what they actually have, which is B flat. But we're going to change this because the original was in A flat. There are a number of reasons why an arranger might want to change the key of a song, but it's usually either to provide an easier key signature, which is the case here. We're going from 4 flats down to 2. Sometimes it's also about the range. Now, Let It Go has a pretty wide range. It goes down very low and goes up really high. So it could be related to the range as well, but I think it's probably just the key signature on this one. The reason we're going to talk about transposition is some students get so used to singing with the original that they want to sing it in that key. But a choral director may still like this particular arrangement. So we're going to use this arrangement, but when it's all finished, we're going to transpose it down to the original key. So we'll leave that there for now. We'll change the time signature to cut time. We will specify an initial tempo marking. And we have flowing halftime feel. Mysterious. We're going to change that to half note equals 69. There is not a pickup measure. And we'll tally up the measures later. So that all looks good so far. Okay. So let's begin by using the main selector. Let's grab this subtitle, click on it, and press delete. We don't need that. We don't need score either. Click, delete. Let's grab this and just get out of the way a little bit. Could even make those smaller. They're pretty large right now. Yeah, let's do that. So we're going to double click that, Command A for select all, or just grab and drag to highlight it. Go to text, size, let's go down to 10, and then let's do the same thing here. And just like before, let's add ARR for Ranger. Change that to 10. Okay, that looks better. So now, let's talk about entering notes with the MIDI controller. So a MIDI controller is just an electronic keyboard, but the sending of MIDI signals allows you to press the keys on the piano and have them come through into Finale as notes in the score. In order for that to work, you need two things. First, you need to make sure you're connected with a USB cable. The regular side of the USB goes into the computer, and the other more square-shaped portion goes into the piano, the MIDI controller on the back. It'll be marked either USB or MIDI. MIDI controllers have had, electronic pianos have had MIDI outputs for a very long time now. So I'm almost certain that any electric piano that you're using in your homes or in your dorms will have a MIDI output. If you're in the lab, this is all set up already. So you have your USB connected, and then you need to install the driver. So a driver is going to be what allows the signals from your MIDI controller to be interpreted and understood by Finale. So what you'll do is you'll go to Google and you'll type in the model and the make of your keyboard. So I'm using a Yamaha YPG 235 right now. So I would just go to Google, type in Yamaha YPG 235 driver. That's probably going to take me to Yamaha's website under downloads, and then I would just find the one appropriate for me. I'm using a Mac, so I would find the Mac version with my current operating system. If you're using a PC, you would find that one, and you would just download your computer's version of that driver, install it. If Finale is already open, close out of Finale, restart the computer, restart Finale. It should be working just fine. If it doesn't automatically start playing with your MIDI controller, you can either Google that or contact me. I'm very happy to help try to talk you through it, or you can bring your computer to my office, but it's something that's usually pretty simple to figure out either through Google or YouTube tutorials. So let's say you have that all set up, and again, if you're in the lab right now, it already is set up. Now, as long as you have that pink line there, which normally appears as soon as you click on a note, if I play a note on my piano, it's going to come up on the Finale project. I always like to make sure the volume's turned to 0 on my keyboard, otherwise it comes through both. Which isn't a problem, it's just unnecessary. So now I'm going to push delete to go back. So let's start entering notes. We're going to start with the eighth notes. We'll do the piano line first. So we're going to put this down here. By the way, on the PDF you have, it starts with just piano, and then it adds a soprano, alto line, and then it adds a tenor bass line later. That's something that we'll talk about in a later lesson, hiding staves. Right now it's not necessary. But we will just jump in straight to the inputs. So with the eighth note selected, because eighth notes are the first notes I play, I'm just going to play those notes. And then tie. Now to change notes, this part, you could just go back up here, but I'm going to show you a faster way. So the first thing you're going to do is just play the next note, even though it's a different note value. So I'm going to play this B flat. Now I'm going to push Option 5, and it changes it to a quarter note. So you can use that keyboard shortcut to change the length of the note, the rhythmic value. If you don't already have either your Notes app open or a piece of paper and pen, please pause the video and go get something to write with, because I'm going to give you the keyboard shortcuts for these. If you want to select a whole note, you hold Option and push 7. A half note, hold Option, push 6. Quarter note, Option 5. Eighth note, 4. 16th note, 3. 32nd note, 2. 64th note, 1. So hold Option and push that. But it's very important that you remember to push it after you've played the note, because it's always going to change the current note. It's not going to set up to change the next one. So that's why I played the B flat, then I pushed Option 5, and now I'm going to push my period to add the dot, and that one's ready to go. So now moving forward, I'm going to play my next note. To go back to an eighth note, I'm going to push, it already started as an eighth note, so we're good there. Now I'm going to play the next notes. That tie showed up a little funny. So again, tie, you just push T. Oh, and now we need a quarter note again, so push the A first, then Option 5, then the C, and it automatically defaulted to a C because that's all there was room for. Keep going. Now I'm going to change to a half note with Option 6. What's really nice is I don't have to go in and change the accidentals or anything. I just play the note on the MIDI controller and it automatically picks it up the way I wanted it to. But I do want to change that. That looks good. F. That'll be E flat. Sometimes when you start a new measure, you do have to reset this. Not all the time, but sometimes. If it's ever more trouble than it's worth, you can always go back and select this one to get yourself back on the right track. Okay, so now let's add in the bottom notes. So we're going to click on the whole note, get this selected, and now I'm just going to play these notes. You can already see how much faster that was. Now we would enter it. It's largely the same, not exactly the same, but very similar. It looks like it's mostly just that final note that's different. So again, there are a few things that we could do for that. We could either click and drag, or we could just put the notes in. So let's click and drag. So I want to click on 4 measures across 2 different lines. So I'm going to click the top line of one. I'm going to go to the end of the phrase, hold Shift, and click the bottom line of the other. I'm going to click on Command C for copy, put the mouse in the top left corner where I want this all to start, and Command V for paste. Then I just need to add in that extra note. So the second time goes to E natural, and there's also a C. So click on that one. C, and I'll push 3 for third, and N for natural. Alright, so that should be good so far. Let's listen to it and make sure. Alright, sounds great. I just want to make sure there wasn't an extra C missing in measure 5 that I needed. Oh, or pick up to 5 I meant. Okay, that looks good. So now let's go to the vocal part. So it's going to be pretty much the same thing. We're just going to start by doing the melody. And of course we need to go through and finish the piano, but I'm just going to skip right to the vocals. Now this starts on the soprano, alto line. So let's label those different lines just so it's a little easier to read. You might think we're going to click on text to change these, but because it's part of the staff, we're not. We're actually going to click on the staff tool, which is the treble clef. You want to right click or hold Control and click this square and change Edit Full Staff Name to soprano, enter alto. Still going to have that one there because it's the first staff where you have multiple instruments, voice 1, voice 2, the same thing would happen with any other instrument. There's a way we can sort of post-production edit that away once we've exported it. Again, that's not part of this assignment, so it's okay to just leave it like that. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Control click, edit staff full name, tenor bass. Now, let's say I want to change it over here. It's usually an abbreviation, right? So I'm going to do Control click, soprano again, edit abbreviated staff name, and I'm just going to put S-A. Now that's going to appear throughout, and now I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Control click, edit abbreviated staff name. Do it one more time. It's interesting that it says that. Let's do TB. Change the top one. One more time. If that was just me doing something wrong, I'm sure many of you saw it and saw the train wreck coming. There we go, SATB. That looks much better. Okay, so back to entering the vocals, which happens right here. You'll notice where the vocal comes in, there's this measure, measure 9. Now, unlike working on Rondo alla Turca, where we had to shift things around, we're not going to need to do that. You're also not going to need to fit measures in any particular way. You're welcome to if you want to, but you do not need to for this assignment. We do, however, want to add that measure number, so we're going to click on the expression tool, double click the beginning of measure 9, go to rehearsal marks and measure number. Anytime you have a measure number, you're going to want to do that. Another thing that I'm not going to show you in this video, because I've shown you in previous videos, but that you'll need to do, is go through and enter every chord. You'll need to enter every dynamic marking, every articulation marking, and any text like solo. But we'll go and look at a couple of those just to keep you on the right track. So we have this C right there. For that one, I'm actually just going to start this way. And again, I'm pushing R for rest. And have my C there. So now I'm going to slide this up so I can read everything. Start with quarter notes. Option 4. Delete that one. T for tie. Moving forward. We needed, oh, those were eighth notes, so let's back that up. Now the first one selected. Option 4 again. Option 4. Backspace and T. Let's do T again. There you go. And when I'm putting notes in, I actually don't think it really takes that much longer to keep my left hand on the keyboard and just select the notes, and then to, sorry, when I say keyboard, I mean left hand on the computer keyboard, and keep my right hand on the musical instrument keyboard and change the rhythmic values that way. That's how I prefer to do it, but I do want to show you this option version. Some people really prefer that. Then we want to stay on eighth note. Dot. and then tie, eighth note, tie, and now that all looks good. So now let's talk about entering lyrics. This is your lyric tool. You're going to select that, and you'll notice that this arrow is directional. So you want to put it underneath the notes where you want to add lyrics, but make sure it's pointing at them. So right now it's pointing at the tenor line, so we want to put it a little higher. There we go. Double click. And now we're just going to type in the words. If I push the space bar, it automatically jumps to the next note. Now for words with multiple syllables, if you push the hyphen button, it also skips to the next note. So I'm going to type in mound hyphen 10. If I slide this up so you can see it. There we go. Now I'm going to click on the next note. Mountain 2 hyphen night. Now I want this note, this word to be two notes. They're tied, but they still look like two notes. So I'm going to type in my semicolon like that has, and then I'm just going to push space, space again, and when I continue with my lyrics, when I'm done with this line, that word night is going to have the line underneath of it, showing that that word goes with both of those notes above it, which is also used for melismatic passages. Footprint, spacebar, spacebar, period. Okay, so that all looks good. Now it didn't add the line here, and sometimes it doesn't because the word night takes up this much space and this note only takes up that much space. But on footprint, it did add the line because the amount of space between this note and that note is about twice as long as the amount of space the word takes up. So they only use the line when they need to make it clear. Now one problem with this part here, is that the lyrics are pretty close to the words. So I'm going to click on this second one and just move it down a little bit. You'll notice that this portion is also a solo. So I'm going to go back to the expression tool. I'm going to go back to where that part starts. I'm going to double click on that note. Expressive text, tempo, technique. Let's see, it might actually be under articulation. Solo isn't exactly a type of articulation, but it might be there. Let's try articulation. I think it is under expressive. If we don't see it in a moment, we'll just make one up. Okay, so let's just create one. We'll call this expressive. No, probably technique text. It's not really any of those, but let's just put it under technique. Create technique. Oh, the difference between technique and expressive is whether it starts off straight or italicized. So we do want to italicize. So let's go back to expressive text. Create expressive text. Solo. Assign. And now we click and we drag that wherever we want it. We want that above. And you can do that with anything you need to write in terms of text that you're adding in. So end solo, measure 24, you would do the same thing. You would create a new one, you'd write end solo, then after that you'd write all or unison, or just tutti, all with solo. A few things that I want to point out. Let's look at where the chorus comes in. Right here at measure 35. So I'm going to skip to measure 35. I don't have enough. So to add measures, if you were just writing in, it would probably continue adding a measure each time you filled up whatever happened to be the last measure. But you add a bunch by going to Edit, Add Measures. You can add as many as you want. Let's just add 10, 12. Let's add 12. You'll actually need more than that. Okay, so this is 32, 33, 34. So this is measure 35. So I just want to show you that right here, where you have lots of notes at once, you can play all of them, and it will show up the way you want it to. If you got to the end of the song, let's say you accidentally added too many measures, you would just either click and drag all the measures you don't want, or just like we did before, you can click the top left one of a passage you want to remove, as well as the bottom right one, hold shift and click, and then push delete, and that will get rid of those measures as well. All this text, that's something that you'll add in. The chords, it doesn't need to play the chord back, so some of these, I'm sure it will tell you that it doesn't know what that is. Let's look at one of those, like this one right here, E flat major 7 with no 3. If I enter that chord symbol right here by clicking on the chord tool, and that's measure 2, so it's E flat major 7, no 3. Yeah, so it doesn't know what that is. Would you like to add it to the library? Yes. And then click OK. And we don't have to worry about the playback. That's okay. In fact, once you start entering chords, I would go up to Chord and make sure Enable Playback is deselected, because you'll hear everything you need to hear right there. Okay, so the chords, the tempo, dynamics, any articulation, you're entering all of the lyrics. When you see portions where both voices, or sorry, all the voices, like top and the bottom here, are singing the same thing, what you'll do is you'll leave the text only on the top one so that it shows up in the middle, and only if there was some kind of polyrhythm where the top was singing one thing while the bottom was singing something different, then you would enter the text below. If you found that notes were getting in the way, again, you can use the staff tool to click and create space. So if I found that I didn't have enough room for the words, that the tenor and bass part were singing too high and getting in the way, I can just click and drag that down to make more room. You can always do that when you need room for it. I'll put that back to 1 inch. Close enough. All right, so this assignment is due next Tuesday. Next Tuesday we're meeting in class, so you'll want to print this out. But before you print it, you have to change the key, because again, we want to put this in the original key. So let's listen to that intro one more time. We want to transpose that up though. You transpose by clicking on this, the key signature tool, double-clicking the first measure. We want to change this to the key we want. So we want to go from from B flat to A flat, transposing that down. I may have said up earlier. We're going to transpose that down. So we'll click down, because that would put it up a 7th instead of down a 2nd. And now this is the actual key of the song. It's very important that that be your last step in submitting this project, because if you change the key too early and then you go back and enter notes, but you enter them in the same staff position as notes in the original, then they're going to be wrong. They're all going to be off by 1 note. So again, it's very important that the final step before submitting it is change the key. Then you're going to print this, and you'll bring a hard copy to class next Tuesday, and you'll submit it then. Any questions about any of this, whether it be one of the new techniques we talked about, such as entering notes with the MIDI controller, entering lyrics, spacing, simply setting up your driver, anything like that, again, please email me, call my office line. I can talk you through it. I can make a tutorial video such as this one, but focus just on the question you have, or we can meet during my office hours, whatever works out the best. So any questions, please bring them to me. Good luck, and I'll see you in class next Tuesday.